Section 13 of Weird Tales Double Feature, The Skull and the Body Master, by Harold Ward. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. The Body Master, Chapter 9. I judge that several weeks must have elapsed between the time the foregoing was written and what follows. What does mankind know about psychic phenomena? I remember reading the attempts of various novelists to exploit the subject. Combining a smattering of psychology with a vivid imagination, they succeed in knocking together a readable, though unreliable, story, trusting to the general lack of knowledge to cover their untruthfulness. And who can blame them? Secure behind the ramparts of the grave's grim silence, they can defy the world to prove them wrong. Their weird hypotheses bring them gold, power, and position in the world of letters. And I, the only man who ever sent his soul hurtling through the realms of space to explore the mysteries of the great unknown, I must keep silent. The human mind refuses to believe what it does not understand. Were I to make public what I know, even if it were possible, I would be derided, held up to ridicule by press and public, for despite our vaunted civilization, we are still slaves to superstition and ignorance, ever ready, like those of old, to strike down one who dares utter the truth. Who among the millions on this globe would believe that I have spent days, weeks, months, in the dim past? As a man looks upon a motion picture of himself thrown upon the screen, so I have seen myself in the ages gone by. In shining armor, a plumed lance in my hand, I have ridden with the crusaders, or fought with the devil-may-care gallantry of the times for the favor of a damsel's smile. I've been the head of as bloody a gang of cutthroats as ever slit a weasand or scuttled a craft. I smile when I think of the things that I have seen. I, who am now the head of a modern detective agency, hired to run down the man whose gigantic brain has made these things all possible. I have been among the best and the worst of them in days gone by. Yet who would believe such a story? Lessman is too far in advance of his time. Yet there is a possibility that a few centuries hence some eye may read these lines and wonder how the men of today could be so dense. I am no longer afraid of death. I know now that such fear is only a superstitious idea. There is no such thing as death. That which we term death is but a step from one life to another. Lessman has taught me that life is a cycle, and that when we leave it, we enter into another existence, better or worse than the one we are quitting in accordance with our own actions. Lessman. Ah, there is the intellect. It is he who has made it possible for me to view wonders which no man ever looked upon before. I wonder how I could have doubted him. Lessman is a scientist, a thinker ahead of his time. Now that he has shown me there is no death, I feel no compunction about taking life, for by taking life we merely assist nature by a few years, leaving the body for us to experiment on. He has promised me that some day he will publish the results of his conclusions in order that the world may know and study. When he does, I will occupy a star part on the pages, for it is I who, at the command of Lessman, have explored the realms unknown, bringing back to him the fruits of my knowledge. And I have met Avis again and again. I have found that she has been with me through the ages, my loved one, my affinity. In every period of the past she has accompanied me, just as she will in the future, until the time comes where divine intelligence brings all things to an end. Let me start at the beginning. No more do I live in a cell-like room, eating like an animal with the cattle whose brain power is not as great as mine. With Avis by my side, I dine in state with Lessman and Meta. The next evening, immediately after dinner, the body master summoned me to his library. He was anxious to commence his experiments. At the beginning I was nervous, keyed up to the highest pitch, regretting the bargain I had made with him. But within 5 minutes he had wrought a change in my mind, and under the mastery of his words I soon reached a point where I was as enthusiastic as he. Remember, I have dabbled in philosophy to a certain extent myself. I took a degree at Princeton before I took up the business of crime detection, but my knowledge is elementary compared with that of Lessman. But I am getting away from my subject. Under the spell of his eloquence I forgot that I was the servant and he the master, that I was merely a prisoner, subservient to my jailer's will. For an hour we discussed the subject. I was as interested as he. There is, he claims, no heights to which man cannot climb, providing he so wills. To him, man is, or should be, absolutely the master of his own body and soul. His is a mind that has reached on where others stopped. Hypnotism to him is child's play. Soul transference, the exchange of bodies. These are the things that this man dabbles with. But he has his limit. He can go so far and no further. However, with my will submissive to his, with my mind attuned to his, he believed that he could send me hurling through space. In other words, he was to be the power station which would furnish me the energy to make the voyages of exploration. I was like wet clay in his hands. With the enthusiasm of a youngster, I gave myself over to him. Leaning back in my chair at his command, I made my mind as nearly as possible an absolute vacuum. It was probably but for an instant, but enough. There was none of the pain that I felt before on that never-to-be-forgotten occasion when my soul was divorced from my body. Instead, I felt my soul, my mental being, leave my body. I stood beside myself, sitting there in the chair. There was no fear, nothing except a feeling of buoyancy. End of The Body Master, Chapter 9.